Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hi there, and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth with me, Peter Robbins. You are listening, of course, on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and you can watch this show live here at kgradb.com or on YouTube, and you can listen to it, that is, not watch it, once it's archived at Spreaker.com. And if you decide to subscribe to KGRA, you're not just subscribing to my show, but to their huge catalog of shows. And if you mention my name, or you actually not mention it, but write it in, PETER, as your subscription code, you receive a full 30% discount. No monologue today. We're going to go right into an introduction for our guest for tonight. And is a dear friend and a remarkable guy who this will be the first of probably several shows that we'll have him on. Doug Auld was born in Queens, New York, like me, but spent much of his childhood in New Jersey. He grew up with a love for and fascination with nature and wildlife, all things mechanical, and the subject of UFOs. His lifelong fascination with this phenomena underscored his gravitating toward all things science fiction and TV shows like The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits when he was growing up. He went on in life to apply the things he learned in a variety of disciplines. He attended trade high school for auto mechanics, welding, and auto body. Around high school age, he began to play ice hockey and still does. And I think you had a game yesterday, as I recall. After seeing the Doors in concert in 1970, he began studying piano and classical music, eventually writing 18 pieces of original music. His band, East Agony, played in several venues around the metropolitan area, including the famous CBGB's located in New York City. Transferred auto mechanics skills to learning to be a piano tuner, a highly regarded technical career, and it gave him a chance to be around the piano. He began studying classical piano privately with a graduate of Juilliard School. Following a visit to the Salvador Dali Museum in Cleveland, Ohio, Doug was inspired to begin painting. Primarily self-taught, he pursued art and painting, eventually taking continuing education courses at the legendary Art Students League in New York City, the School of Visual Arts, my alma mater in New York City, and the New York Academy in New York. Surrealist painting led him to the photojournalism school with auto mechanics and tools as a photorealism school. That is a school of painting where you paint and it looks like photography. His first subjects in those paintings were tools. In 1993, he began a series of surreal celebrity portraits and was awarded Absolute Vodka's Artist of the Year as a result. Numerous TV appearances followed, including on Entertainment Tonight, MTV, and Inside New Jersey, Channel 13. This led to a series of paintings on the topic of religion and uniform, depicting nuns and priests and the illusion of our exterior appearances. This, in turn, led to what I consider, his most challenging work, a 3-year art project titled State of Grace, consisting of large-scale portraits of adolescent burn survivors. It was featured in the New York Times Metro section in 2006 and on German television. His Burn Survivors series brought him into the burn survivor community, in a way that few outsiders have ever experienced. Among other things, Doug was a guest at The Art of Recovery, the 33rd annual event of the regional burn centers, where he displayed several works at the Philadelphia Museum. He and burn survivor volunteer Jelani Jeffrey were guest speakers at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, and in the fall of 2007, Doug was given a one-man show at the Barry Art Galleries in Ramapo College, Mahwah, New Jersey. This was followed by an oral presentation to the student body by Doug and burn survivor Jelani Jeffrey. After witnessing a UFO, Doug began his involvement in photography and night vision filming of UFOs. This led to his becoming heavily involved with the UFO community and becoming good friends with many of the leading figures in the work. This, in turn, led to creating an extraordinary collection of paintings, 100 oil-painted portraits of whistleblowers, mainly in the UFO and Black Ops area. In 2017, Doug, again, following his intuition, created a stage musical, Hypnotica, to bring the UFO and paranormal topic to the Broadway stage, hopefully Broadway. The word Hypnotica came to him as he woke up from sleep one morning. Doug created the entire story, characters, and composed and performed all of the musical demos over a 7-year period, inspired by several real-life events. The show was completed late last year. Doug Auld's work has been featured on CBS, Entertainment Tonight, many other television venues, and his paintings have been the subject of many one-man shows at university, museum, and private galleries. His art website is dougauld.com. That's DOUGAULD. His UFO website is dougauld.com/UFO. And the site devoted to his musical, Hypnotica, is Hypnotica, HYPNOTTA.com. With that, Doug Auld, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
See you on a Monday here.
It's great to see you again, my friend. With the pandemic totally distorting our senses of time, it has really been, 3 years or more since we've actually seen each other?
I think so. It was around our birthday in New York City in September. Peter, I'm going to make one correction.
Please.
My show is called Hypnotta. Hypnotta. Hypnotta.
Thank you. Trust me to add an extra syllable.
Yeah, that's all right. And I'll explain as we move along where that word came from, because it was a word I never heard before that was given me. So, but Go right ahead.
Yeah. Again, the last time we saw each other, it wasn't just my birthday. It was you taking me out to dinner for my birthday at a great restaurant down in Soho in Lower Manhattan, Odeon, which, does it still exist, dare I ask?
I believe it does. I haven't been there in a while, but I believe it does. And I guess we're going to be moving towards another birthday dinner in September there. So let's look forward to it.
I'll look forward to it too. Let's start at the beginning, my friend. You were born in Queens and you grew up in New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about your parents?
Yeah, born in Kew Gardens, Queens. My mom and dad moved us out to Paramus, New Jersey. I had an older brother, 2 younger sisters, and had a farm behind our house with a crop duster passing over and getting a good dose of DDT every Saturday. That could explain a lot of my thought process. However, my mom and dad were wonderful people. I had an idyllic upbringing. My dad was a car dealer, and he was a manager of a car dealer, and then he got awarded his own Chrysler dealership. So he became a Chrysler dealer, and so we were a little spoiled in the neighborhood, seeing a new car in the driveway every week.
Gosh, right.
And what ended up happening was that was part of my decision to go to Bergen Technical High School, was to become an auto mechanic and eventually work at my dad's dealership. So those were the plans. And being very mechanical in the first place, that's what I was, looking towards. And in the last year of high school at Bergen Tech in Hackensack, New Jersey, my brother Greg, who's a big influence on my life, in my life, called me up and said, "Hey, this Friday or so and so, get a change of clothes. I'm going to take you to Philadelphia. We're going to see a band." I said, "A band?
No.
Okay, cool. Who's playing?" He said, "A band called The Doors." So I said, "Okay." So we took a drive to Philadelphia, the Spectrum, and we saw The Doors play, and that
Wow.
and that ended up being a thorn in my poor father's side, because I discovered a world blossomed in front of me.
Yeah.
Here I'm going to be an auto mechanic and work in a car dealership and possibly inherit a car dealership, which means I'm standing in a showroom from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. And then I'm seeing Jim Morrison and The Doors living the life. And I'm like, wait a minute now.
And Ray Manzarek at the keyboard.
Yeah, and I met them. I met Ray.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I didn't meet Jim. He had been passed away. But anyway, long story short, that was the turning point for my creativity, going from like this mechanical world, which I still love, and I still work on my own cars. But that's what then I problem solved that scenario and jumped over to piano tuning. But anyway, did you want to hear anything more about my family?
Tell us a little about your mom.
My mom was beyond such a gift that I didn't realize it because I was too much of a goofy kid.
Often the case.
But my mom was Douglas. Everything Douglas does is wonderful. And my father was the opposite. And this may explain a good balance. My father was, did you sell it? That's all he would ever ask me. Hey, Dad, I made a new painting, or I wrote a new song. He'd put the New York Times down with his pipe and he'd go, did you sell it? And well, not yet. And the paper would go back up in front of his face. And so I never got approval from my father in that way. But my mother was just everything I did. And us kids did was wonderful and loving. And it was a really special time when you look back at the late 50s and early 60s.
Doug, one question I routinely ask guests, in part because I am a devoted reader and because I love the world of film. How old were you when you mastered reading well enough to be able to, read a book that was intended for adults rather than kids?
Well, I'm like one of these people that since parochial school, since a Catholic grammar school, I was berated to be, and made fun of for not being able to read properly, and no one knew what dyslexia was then.
Yep, same thing.
It was basically just daydreaming out the window was what they called dyslexia, and so I'm like a person that has struggled my entire life with reading an entire book. I've always been a person that has read and grabbed sections and things that I wanted.
Yeah. And
I think I turned away from reading so much in an academic matter.
Understood.
Because it was too frustrating. So I found with my art and my music and my creativity and everything that I've done creatively, it was my way around that kind. So I have a sort of a very homegrown learning system of self-education, which has never stopped. In fact, it's continued to this very day. And I think now when I look at it and I see all those MFAs and master's degrees out there, I'm kind of happy that I have the kind of education I have.
Yeah. May that process of learning never stop for any of us. I think it's tragic when I occasionally run into somebody who feels they've learned as much as they need to or want to, and I wonder what planet they're from.
Yeah.
Your relationship with the world of film and movies, did that begin, as it did for so many of us, sitting in front of the family TV, or were you a family that would go out to the movies to see a film together, or that you started to do it at a certain age with your friends?
A little bit of both. Of course, we were babysat by a television. We were sat in front of a TV constantly. And in fact, I just wrote something recently. I just did a compilation of the original Godzilla film score.
Wow.
I did my own version of it. In fact, I'm trying to reach the people who produced Godzilla so that I can ask for permission to actually put it out somewhere or put it on video. But
Wow.
I mean, we had, Peter, you may remember, we had something called $1 Million Movie.
The best.
And not
The
only
same
that,
movie all week till you memorized it.
not only that, it was on 3 times in a row on a Saturday.
Yep.
So my brother Greg and I would get, if it was a rainy Saturday, Greg and I would sit in front of the TV and watch $1 Million Movie at 10 o'clock, at 1, and at 3. And we'd watch Godzilla 3 times as my mother was walking around the house, and she would be like, Douglas, didn't you watch that already? We like, no, Mom, it's just a new one. It's just coming on now. We you know, because we loved it so much. So, but my dad played opera on Sundays in the house. So he would sit behind his New York Times.
How great.
And we had Puccini arias and carousel shows and West Side Story. And I think as a kid, I got all that in me. And I would be like, of course, at the time we were like, turn that, stuff off. But all that beautiful melody from Puccini melodies are tops. And we would hear all this great music and all these great shows. And my mom and dad would actually take us to some of these shows.
Oh, my gosh.
And so this gives you an idea of how wonderful my parents were, regardless of what I may have thought at the time. I thought my father was a hard-head conservative. And in today's world, he's an extreme left liberal. And the way things have changed.
So ironic, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. I mean, my father allowed a tow truck to drop off a 426 Hemi engine in our driveway so I could work on it. Oil on the driveway and this and that. And I'm like, I wouldn't. My son today, I'd kill him before I let him do that. So they were just a very different time. My mom and dad did take us to movies, but mostly I have to say that I think Rod Serling made such an incredible contribution to not only my life,
to the lives of millions of us, Doug.
Oh my God. And not only in my life towards the idea of science fiction or UFOs, social qualities, social justices. Yeah. He expressed social issues through alien imagery because he couldn't really write about it. It was too touchy. And to this day, I look back and I thank God for him. He's an amazing inspiration in my life. And then I had The Outer Limits and One Step Beyond. And
One Step Beyond with John Newland.
Yeah. And then we would get into Star Trek and everything else. So I'm always very, very hooked into anything sci-fi or anything questioning who are we, what are we doing here? It's run my entire life.
Serling fascinated me. I was, like you, a huge fan as a kid. And I think it was Saturday night that we'd all gather around the TV to watch that extraordinary show. In later life, I was so curious about him. And he earned an early Emmy writing a remarkable screenplay called Requiem for Heavyweight.
Oh, yeah.
It starred Anthony Quinn. It was absolutely heartrending and brilliant. Yeah. Plus, he radiated such a cool exterior with his wonderfully modulated tones and that ubiquitous cigarette in his hand. But that man went through hell in World War II. He fought his way through the South Pacific and came away with nightmares that lasted him the rest of his life. Yeah. They were applied in some ways to his creative work. I'm very proud to say when he settled down after the war, he did so not that far from where I am. And his wife, Carol, I think, who is gone now, lived only a few towns away. His daughter is still very active in the yearly Twilight Zone Festival at Ithaca College, where they show original perfect kinescopes and have Twilight Zone seminars and the like. But you touched another nerve, and I don't want to take all of your time, but $1 Million Movie, you say that to a New Yorker of a certain era, every night. It was on once a night, and then on Saturdays 3 times, Sunday possibly as well.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I remember watching and memorizing parts of, because you had a lot of time to do it, King Kong, some of the great Hollywood movies of the time, Yankee Doodle Dandy, where I first became a James Cagney fan at the age of 7, Kipling stories, and it just immersive and a way for a young person to fall in love with films.
Yeah.
By the time that you were getting out of elementary school and getting into junior high, as we used to call middle school, did you have any thoughts beyond inheriting the dealership of what you dreamt you could possibly be when you were growing up, when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was just mainly all the way up to the point of high school, towards the end of high school, a tinkerer, a curious person about mechanics, building mini bikes and go-karts, engines, inventing wheelie bars for my mini bike so I wouldn't hit my head when it took off, fish, turtles, frogs, everything you could think of nature-wise I brought home. Talk about my wonderful parents. I had a snake that got out and came under the door as my mother was coming downstairs.
I did too.
Must be maybe a Virgo trait.
Okay, possibly, yeah. Wow, Snake Brothers as well. I had a baby alligator as well.
Okay. Well, I kept all this stuff in jars. I had lightning bugs at night. And I was Mr. Nature Boy everywhere. So it was nature and mechanics and things until that moment when I went to see the Doors play with my brother. So
hearing you talk, I'm thinking somewhat wistfully, young people today, who have similar dreams that we had, with any luck, families as nurturing as we had, have no idea in that pre-digital, all analog world, where it was you and your imagination and, going out into the park or working on something, taking something apart, putting something together, reading comic books, racing around on bicycles with your friends, and no interference from any social platforms, the internet. Like you, my dyslexia made me want to compensate because I was so frustrated with my reading skills early on, although my dyslexia primarily focused in the world of numbers. But I was a very precocious young artist, and that was where the adult world gave me approval and encouragement to get better. We came to the world of painting in very different ways, though, and I'm a huge fan of your painting, and you have worked through so many subjects and styles, and taking chances creatively that a lot of artists would not. I studied art at university for 2 years, then graduated from the School of Visual Arts with a BFA, taught painting there until my career derailed late in my 20s when I became deeply involved in the world of UFO studies. Art was all it was about. And living in the greater New York area, our opportunity to go to the museums and galleries, it's indescribable to say how important that was in so many respects. I wonder if that was your sense as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was exposed to it. I would go to the Metropolitan Museum in the city and Guggenheim and places like that. And I also took a 3-week by myself, which was a little daring for me back then. I took a 3-week stay in Paris to go to the Louvre.
Oh my God.
And Theodore Géricault's Raft of the Medusa was my personal favorite. I identify with him in some way because he was a polo player on the horse, And so I'm an ice hockey player. He's a polo player. And I guarantee he was the kind of guy that if he was given an opportunity to get in there and finish that painting, or we have another polo game, he'd be like, I'm playing polo, man. That's like good stuff. And so I studied all the art there, and I've always been a realist painter. I know that, it's all my approach to art is in a genre of representation, whether it's surrealism or realism or hyperrealism or painterly realism. It's still recognizable imagery rather than abstraction or anything else. And I think it ties to my mechanics. It ties to, and I was friends with Chuck Close, as I may have mentioned to you.
Yes.
Chuck and I would talk about the idea of doing a good job. Well, what do you mean by a good job? Well, how do we evaluate a good job? Well, if I'm going to paint Peter Robbins, it better look like Peter Robbins. That would be a good job. And if it doesn't, then I'm not going to hide under the, that's my interpretation kind of way of looking at it. So does that explain a little bit of how I felt about it?
You mentioned Chuck Close, a painter who passed a few years ago, and I had tremendous admiration for anybody listening, not familiar with that name. Google Chuck Close, Close. When I was still in art school in the late 60s, he exploded on the New York art world with a series of huge, super realistic portraits of several of his friends, including a then rather unknown modern composer named Philip Glass,
right,
who I knew in passing because working construction work down in Soho as a carpenter. Phil was a plumber, and a very good one. Also, Richard Serra, the great Corten steel sculptor, who I later studied with. And his later work, and of course he suffered a profound stroke that would have put a lot of people out of the painting business forever. He simply found ways to accommodate special rigged easels and wheelchairs, and just continued on to create this superb body of work. I'm rather envious that you knew him. Again, he was an artist I had great respect for. As you continued to develop as a painter, you came to a point where, again, you entered in, for me, one of the most wonderfully logical ways, based on your background, doing paintings of tools and automotive details. Establish yourself in a realm that you're comfortable and then move on from it. And right now I'd like to begin with, you have so many hundreds and hundreds of pieces of work. We only have a small selection, but just to give our viewers, our listeners will have to use their imaginations, a sense of some of what your work is and has been about. Well, this is beginning before that, although this is a more contemporary picture. And so let's backtrack for a moment, too, because like a lot of American guys.
That's a photo of me, by the way. And
right. Exactly. Sorry about that. Like a lot of American guys, you get involved in a sport. Ice hockey is not the first one. I think of that more for Canadians. What drew you to it, besides the possibility of doing advanced mayhem on the world around you?
It's very hard to explain, but I do have an answer, and I have an answer as to why I'm in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. My father, when I was a young guy, said to me, he was watching a hockey game, and I never watched hockey, and he goes, "Doug, come here." I said, "All right." He goes, "You ever watch hockey?" I said, "No." He goes, "Sit here, sit next to me for a minute." He goes, "So the guys on the left are the Philadelphia Flyers." I said, "Okay," in a dark jersey. And he goes, "The team on the right is the Montreal Canadiens, team in white." And I said, "Okay." And I watched for a few minutes. And there was a nice hockey player named Guy Lafleur, who's very famous, probably one of the most famous names in Montreal Canadian history of ice hockey. And I just fell in love with the fact that there were no helmets, and he had this blonde flowing hair going through the wind. And I'm like, what a cool game. And I'm watching and watching. And I remember starting to learn to play hockey. And ice skating in a place called the Bergen Mall in Paramus, New Jersey.
And so you already skated by that
I
point.
was already skating.
Okay.
And I went out and I bought a Montreal Canadiens jersey. That's how impressionable I was. But Peter, the funniest story is, that's how I started. The funniest story is I played 20 solid years of ice hockey without a helmet.
I'm not saying anything.
And
kids, don't do what Doug did.
no, well, you could. They wouldn't even let you pull in the parking lot of a rink now without a helmet.
Oh,
It was just a different time. And
yes, it was.
mini bikes and go-karts, hitting curbs and going off curbs, skinning my nose, hitting my head on a wall, whatever it was. You cried, you went home, and mom wiped you off, and you kept going. So it was just a very different era. But that's what I put that in there, because that was me in the earlier days in one of my Montreal Canadiens outfits.
I think it's great. I also think it's wonderful that you still play ice hockey. That is awesome, my friend.
Thank you.
And before we move into the world of painting, let me ask you a leading question. You grew up with a great love of science fiction, and again, some of our favorite television shows in that realm. When did your interest first turn to, or you become aware of the very all too real subject of truly anomalous UFOs?
Well, I guess I was watching things like Earth visits the fly.
This Island Earth, the movie?
No.
Oh.
Earth versus the Flying Saucers.
Oh, another great 1956, one of my favorites.
Then there was The Day the Earth Stood Still,
the classic,
and so many other things that were coming out, and I was seeing, and there was a great film with Ray Harryhausen, Stop Go Photography, about this creature that they found in the water, and there was all of this stuff. But something I never mentioned to you.
Stop action.
Yeah, just great stuff. Claymation, claymation, stop action. My brother had a UFO. My brother and I were outside on a summer eve. I'd have to have him to recall the time, but I'm going to guess that I was somewhere in the 10-12 range.
Okay. And
my brother saw a UFO, and he said, "Doug, I don't know where you were. You were there. Then you were in the house." And I said, "What is that floating in the sky down there?" And he said that I was looking for you. And I don't have a recollection of it. I don't have a recollection of it at all. And I'm not trying to build this into some sort of anything.
Sure.
I'm just saying that perked more of my attention on things. And I guess that there was just a number of films and things that came out and every time they came on, I was like, I had to see them, and I had to see them over and over again. I had to keep watching them.
Interesting.
As if I had a familiarity in some sort of way that I can't put my finger on.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, we are now going to segue into some of your paintings. And we're going to begin with one that a lot of people at first look, if they didn't know otherwise, would not assume was a painting. The school of photorealism per se kicked in about 1970 or so. It was a major movement in the modern art world at the time, and obviously very different from realism per se. It was about literally mastering the photographic image. I studied at the School of Visual Arts. One of my instructors was Malcolm Morley, who was one of the original photorealists, and who would sometimes work on his own work in class. And the way Malcolm worked was he'd have an innocuous snapshot that he would blow up and then grid off and then turn upside down and then mask off everything but the tiny little abstract piece that he was working on, finish it, cover it up. A wonderfully obsessive character, and a character with a capital C, who actually at one point, while I was merrily working my way through the Impressionists, spending a good part of a year painting like Seurat, took me aside and told me, he said, "I'm worried about you. and in his wonderful British accent said, "I think you really need to learn a trade or you will starve to death," quote unquote. So I was very impressed that he felt so strongly about my work, but we'll move on from there. Tell us about what drew you to photorealism, aside from the obvious. Wow.
Well, okay, so think about the combinations I'm now going to talk about. My dad in the car business, my love for automobiles, tools, fixing things, the effort of doing what we call a flat-footed good job. And I was very influenced by the early photorealists at OK Harris and Louis Mizell.
Sure. I worked for OK Harris for a while.
Okay. In fact, I walked to this painting. My brother and I, young guys, I think I did this painting when I was 18 years old. Wow. I walked into OK Harris and
showed it to Ivan Karp.
I walked in and I saw him in his office, and I had it in my hand, and I walked in. He goes, excuse me, young man. I'm busy. Don't you knock? And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Karp. I saw you sitting here, and I thought I would just walk in and show you this. And he gave me a little like tongue lashing, but then he said, what do you have there? And I said, this is my latest painting. And he looked at it and he said, young man, that's first rate. He said, first rate. He said,
he's a tough son of a gun.
He said, bring me 10 more of them and I'll give you a show.
Holy moly.
Okay. So I said, thank you, sir, so much, and left. Okay. And of course, here's where I was at the time. 10 more of them? Are you out of your mind? I don't even want to paint another one.
That drive of having mastered something and wanting to move on is a double-edged sword. Ivan, for listeners, was a legendary art dealer. He 10 years before was the kind of Guy Friday for the most powerful, best known, and most successful art dealer in America at the time, Leo Castelli. Yes. A charming gentleman who I used to work for, taking down the old work, putting up the new work in his downtown gallery. And Ivan was the guy who discovered, so to say, Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol in 1960 and 61, and brought them into the Castelli stable. So to have that kind of adventure with him and know if I wanted to pursue this, I could. That's a feather in your cap, my brother. Yeah.
And that's another. Okay, so both the TR6 front end, by the way, that TR6, I hit a telephone pole with and broke my nose.
Shit.
I turned the steering wheel inside out with my face. And we had to get rid of that car. But I got the painting done first. Now that's oil on canvas, and I grid the canvas like we were just talking about. Yep. And if you noticed in the headlight prior, there was actually its own little natural grid squares by the very nature of the headlight itself. This was now, I had a blue car, and I said, all right, let me take an assortment of my tools. Let me set this up on a hood. And I started to, because I started to view tools as little art objects. I like the idea of taking a utilitarian item.
I agree.
Removing it from its usage association and seeing it as a purely visual experience.
Going back to Marcel Duchamp.
Yep. Yes. And I was very much a surrealist too.
Yep.
And Magritte and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, the idea, and people would ask me, they're like, well, wait a minute, Doug, no, I don't understand. Did you use chrome paint? Like, did you just paint
it's
chrome?
Black and white.
And
with a touch of blue.
To try to explain to somebody that that's just paint.
This is one of the most exciting things about painting.
Yeah.
And again, when one paints, one has a very different experience than when one goes to a gallery or museum and sees a painting. One thing that was absolutely an epiphany to me when I was young and would look at paintings in galleries as a young person and in museums was the thought of, I have feelings about this. I like it. I don't like it. It's, whatever. What did it feel like to paint that?
Yeah.
And that's a very special feeling. And to master it to the point where, and then to not overpaint it and walk away at just the right moment. It's a wonderful painting.
Thank you. Because there's compositional elements in it. There's all sorts of stuff that we tend to take for granted when we look at something. Because someone could say, "Well, it's just a picture. It just looks like a picture." Well, I understand that we're calibrated to photography now more than ever. I mean, we have so much photography now that it's inundating, and that the photorealism was very shocking at the time because nobody was painting like that. Ben Schoenheit and
thinking of Ralph Goings, quite a number of wonderful
Richard Estes.
Estes, of course, yeah.
So, and I met a lot of those artists and saw their work and stuff. But what this afforded me also was not only being thrilled and excited to see these paintings come alive, and to see the illusion of, like, if you think back to the TR6, there's that bright shine on the chrome where the sun is in it. There's nothing bright about it. I mean, look at that little reflection. There's nothing about that that's brighter than the white of our backgrounds on our computer.
You got it.
Just that everything is gently calibrated in such a manner as to create that illusion. And the tire, I have to say, the tire was the hardest part of the painting.
Bravo, man.
My God, that rubber, to get a rubbery feeling was like, oh my God. So,
and not like new out of the factory. It's got some use on it.
Yeah. It's just prior to hitting a telephone pole, it was looking good.
An outstanding tire, yes.
And by the way, one more note on it. If you actually turn that image upside down, you would see in the headlight, there's a walkway, some water, and a sky, and there's a landscape in the headlight. Now, I never knew it was there until I turned it upside down. And I'm like, oh my God, there's the walkway. And because I was at a place called Van Sollen Park in Paramus, in New Jersey. And that's where I was when I photographed the car. So anyway.
Well, I've just turned myself right back up and enjoyed that very much. Moving on. Absolute Vodka had for years one of the cleverest, most sophisticated ad campaigns. And I remember 1997, they had Absolute Roswell on the 50th anniversary. Oh, yeah.
I did not.
Gorgeous. I'll scan it for you and send it to you. It's a great image. But this was a major coup that, most advertising-based artists would have given their eye teeth for. And you walk into it and you get this ad, this opportunity.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happened to me in the art world was I was too dumb to know better about what to do or not to do. But Michelle Roux of Caroline Importers somehow saw my work and contacted me. And I think it was because I was on either an Entertainment Tonight, I forget, but something. Sure. Now, I had painted a portrait of Marlon Brando out of honeybees in my surreal collection, which all can be seen on my DougAuld.com website. Doug
and do visit Doug's websites. Yeah. I'll give those URLs again at the end of the show.
So, but anyway, and that was a fanatical painting. I mean, okay, now let's go back to Chuck Close. Grid squares. Well, what was a natural grid? A honeycomb. I thought, well, a honeycomb is a great natural grid. And what would be good mark-making statements about calibration, color, dark light, and so and so. So the empty cell was my dark item, or the shadows of the bees. The honeycomb itself had a little bit of a higher calibration value. And then the bees, depending on how they were adjusting themselves, whether they're going
you spell it out.
Would spell it out, and then one was leaving the scene, and that was like the whole idea of one. And you could see Absolute in a glass, and then to the right is the little shot glass on the right side of the.
It's so original, and again, one of the best things that can happen to an artist is not knowing what you're not supposed to do and doing it, and sometimes it works shockingly well. Yeah. Moving on. A very different type of painting, and more than it appears to be at first glance.
I have to credit LSD early in my life with a little bit of this, because
Amen.
I did have an experience with hallucinogenics, and I was not a party drug guy in any way, shape, or form.
Sure.
But in my last year of high school, I did 3 of the most amazing hallucinogenics back then: Strawberry Fields, Orange Sunshine, and Purple Haze.
Yep.
And all 3 of them, after I finished those trips, and I did them, I tended to do them by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Stare in the mirror, create a wolf, all sorts of crazy stuff. And I was never really a pot guy or any other kind of drug guy in my life. I never.
It was a teacher. It was an absolute guiding spirit.
And what I realized is that everything, absolutely everything, is vibrating with life, from steel, metal, bricks. I remember staring at bricks in my house and seeing the molecules recreating each other to create the brick. I know that sounds out there, but it works its way into my art because I'm thinking of this. And I love the idea of timing and synchronicity. And we think about this every day in our lives. Peter, you get up, you walk out the door, and if you were 1 minute earlier walking out the door, you're hit by a car.
Everything is about that intersection of moments and arcs in people's lives.
So I'll take a selection of fish. I'll make these orange ones coming from the top right, crossing down to the left, bottom left. I've got the blue tangs doing
crossing
their own
down
thing.
To the right.
Yeah, and then I got the black fish and like a little fish in the background. I got hammerheads up in the forehead.
Yeah.
I got that little rockfish on the bottom that's yellow, the clownfish on the left that's orange. And the idea is that only at a certain moment of time and only from this point of view will this happen.
It's a portrait.
It's a portrait of Marilyn Monroe. It's a portrait of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh.
And you blur your eyes, and the further away you get from it, if you know the image of Marilyn Monroe, then there it is.
I love it.
And I did 15 or 18 of these surreal portraits. Jack Nicholson in penguins. I did Orson Welles in fish. I did Einstein in microorganisms, where Einstein, in that painting, it's a 40 by 50 canvas. But what I was proposing was Einstein's portrait could show up on the head of a pin. That's how small it would be.
Wow.
Because all the microbes are doing what they're doing, and it's all scaled in proportion to our world. What we think is small is actually large to something else, or, so on.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking of that extraordinary series of paintings that Chuck Close did toward the end of his life, of thousands of circles, each one a bit different, with its own little life, and all together, a very readable and very sophisticated large portrait. It's just so exciting for me to hear you speak, to a degree, hear my own voice echoing at moments when I came through discoveries as a visual artist, and to see how varied your work is. And with that, before we go on to the next, you did a series, I think it's 100, oil paint portraits of whistleblowers, primarily in the world of UFOs, black ops, but other ones, for example, like a Karen Silkwood, murdered by Kerr McGee, going to a meeting with a New York Times reporter and trying to out them for their nuclear exposure of employees. And one of them that you've allowed us to see here, which I'm going to show next, is a portrait of a good friend of both of ours and a very good friend in the world of serious UFO studies. But you are allowing us to see the portrait at 3 different stages of development. Look over your shoulder, in a sense, and watch as it happens.
Okay, right. So Stephen Bassett, who you're referring to, these were 9 by 12. So I did 100 portraits of various whistleblowers in all different categories. And again, all of these are listed on my website in the whistleblower category. You just scroll down and you go, every genre of my work is on that website.
Yeah.
So I would take, all right, I'll tell you the process. I would take the 9x12 canvas. I would tape it to a board. I would take paper towel, turpentine, and paint. And I would 1, 2, 3, get rid of the white. Because the first thing I want to do is get rid of all white, because white is a calibration issue. And so I get rid of the white. And then I would take another cleaner paper towel and I would rub out highlights. So I would get a blurry kind of ghost image. And John Singer Sargent talked a lot about, one of my favorite painters, talked about the idea of bringing something out of the fog.
One of the greatest American painters and portraitists of all time.
Unbelievable. And I learned a lot from him. And he would talk about, like, all right, so imagine it's a foggy day and your friend in a bright red jacket with a blue hat is half a mile away and he's walking up the street. All right. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to notice that somebody is walking up the street, but it's all going to be gray,
right,
blackish and white. Now, as he's coming out of the fog, a red coat is going to become more defined. A blue hat is going to be more defined. And if he gets close enough, his body language and eventually his features will tell you, hey, that's Joe, my friend down, from so-and-so. So I paint in very much the same way. The painting of Stephen, I think we lost it here, but Peter, if you bring it back up.
It'll come right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would take the paper towel and then I would rub out some sections, and I very much paint the way a sculptor sculpts. If you had a block of marble, and you were going to make a head and shoulders, the crudest part of it would be the shoulders and then the square head. And then once you have that block, you can chip away at it. So I would never really finish anything. I would just get generalities. And my system in this particular series of work was very corrective. I would cut into it and I would correct and I would throw away what I don't want. Yep. So there wasn't like a lot of accurate. People go, oh, you must be a wonderful draftsman. I'm really not. I just have a way of knowing. I'll follow angles and lines for the eyes, lines for the eyebrows, notice aberrations and so-and-so. So that what you're seeing there was probably all done in one day.
Gosh.
From first to second to third, all done, because many of these portraits I did in one day to the most.
Extraordinary. Once you began this series, I think you realized that you were probably creating something of historic significance. And not blowing smoke here, just to say that you chose subject matter that flew in the face of the establishment, sometimes at the risk of the individual's safety, peace of mind, and life. And you enshrined them. It was a way of acknowledging these individuals who are not quite like the rest of us. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, that's right, Peter. And I've had several of them contact me. I had Kay Griggs wrote me a letter and thanked me for doing what I was doing. I knew, I'm blanking on some names right now, but I knew one who just passed away recently. I painted the gentleman that there's a movie called Dark Waters, I think, on TV with who's the actor? He plays the DuPont. When DuPont polluted the water and killed the cows and destroyed everything, there's an actor that's in it. And anyway, the real person that he portrayed, yeah, I painted, and that gentleman wrote me a letter thanking me for portraying him. So, of course, we know Grant Cameron and we know Stephen Bassett. And let me just explain to the viewers, and I think I probably told you this once, how I came about choosing who I decided to paint. I was learning as I went. So as I was becoming aware of the ufology world, the black ops world, the different kinds of people in this entire world, Edward Snowden, whistleblower on his end, there's just so many of the 100 that, sure, that I painted. I was going along, and I had promised myself I was going to paint 50. And when I got to 50, I said, I'm going to end it at 100. And I just kept going, well, I could be painting them still to this day and have
For the rest of your life.
Portraits, right? You included could be part of it. So many people that I didn't manage to get in there. So, I mean, I just wanted to keep, because one would lead me to another. So if I read something about Chris Bledsoe, who I painted,
sure,
then I may read something about Richard Dolan, then I may read something about so-and-so, and I moved and moved and moved, read their story, and said, yeah, I'm gonna put this person in on canvas. And like I said, I did them all in a day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and then sometimes I'd take a break for a week and not do any more and then get back to it. So it took me a number of years to compile the 100, but I'm very proud of the series, and I feel that they are, as Stephen Bassett once told me, he said, don't sell this. This is going to be worth a lot of money. I don't care.
Hold that thought, because believe it or not, we've blown through our first hour. This is Peter Robbins and Doug Auld. Back in 3 minutes. Don't go away.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
And we are back with Meanwhile Here on Earth with myself, Peter Robbins, and my special guest, Doug Auld. Doug, we left off talking about the whistleblower portraits. You've created 100 of them. And surely, as not working a day job, to put it mildly, there is a temptation, dare I say it, to sell your artwork, as many artists have done for millennium. I think it's it's a gift to future viewers, especially at a time to come when we pass through the eye of that needle and the world is in a post-disclosure mode. We know we're not alone, that there will come a time that these, hopefully, I'd like to see them ultimately housed in the Smithsonian or an equally prestigious institution, that we will all get to see them together rather than, I'm sure some of these people said, I'd really like to buy that painting from you, or that it's self-contained, and that's wonderful.
I think the strength in the series, and I made a determination to make it 100 portraits as one singular work.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done. I've had offers to sell a couple of them individually, but I won't do it. I want to save the work. I do believe that has some significance as a collection of 100, and so I'm sitting on them until the time is right.
Exactly. We're now going to transition, and I don't want to over dramatize this, but what you're about to see will be disturbing to some people. At a certain point in your life, we're all aware that going through a fire and suffering burn injuries is probably one of the most horrific kind of things that a human being has to live with. And these people, some of them are so disfigured that they simply are not out among us. It would be too painful for many people to see them, and too painful for some of the victims to be seen. At a certain point, you did something, though, and for me, I'm driven in life by an understanding that truth can be beauty, even if it's a very dark beauty. It's the way it is, and we can either run away from it, embrace it, or at least respect it. At a certain point, what made you drew your awareness first to these extraordinary people that had survived these horrible kinds of injuries and, with their own dignity, moved on to continue their life either privately or in the public realm?
All right. Well, I'll give you the genesis of how this began. I was about 17 years old, and I drove up to a place called Tice's Farm in Montvale, New Jersey, to buy coffee, and it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, maybe towards the fall. And I was up there and was ready to pay for my coffee and donuts, and I noticed a commotion in the it was like a big tent, sort of at the end. And if like a celebrity is coming, like everybody is standing and turning around and walking back, but then pointing and turning again. Well, this is going on. And I'm like, I wonder who is coming. I wonder who's walking towards me. I was ready to check out. And I finally see, as it moves closer to me, a woman with a child. And I'm assuming, as probably anyone would, that that's the mother of the child, mother and daughter. And she had long curly hair in her face. And when she got right up close to me, about 3 or 4 feet away, and she turned and her hair came out of her face, her entire face was melted. There was no nose. There were no ears. She was just a candle of drip. And a little mouth and little eyes peering out from these slits. And I went, and I didn't know what to say because I had never been confronted with anything like that. And I'm always very personable. And I wanted to say hello or how are you? I didn't. And she looked at me, I looked at her, and it felt like it was 10 minutes. It was probably only 3 seconds. And I turned and she turned and I paid for my coffee and I walked away. And I remember taking a deep breath and sitting in my car and going, oh my God. So hold that thought. Fast forward, I'm in the island, off Belize mainland, an island called Key Calker. And I'm in a bar restaurant and I see a severely burned guy sitting there. This time now I'm like, this is a little bit years later. And I'm like, wow. And I introduced myself to him and we just started talking this and that and, so on. And I don't think I said much more about anything. And now hold those 2 events. And all the while I'm thinking of, the Twilight Zone and how Rod Serling brought up the fact of our illusion. and everything's tying together, and this and that. And Hunchback of Notre Dame made a very big impression on me as a kid. Watching
Another
things
$1 million movie special.
Yeah. So, what happened was 9/11 happened. I'm here in Hoboken, New Jersey, and I'm having coffee on my rollerblades down near the water, and someone comes out of the coffee shop and says, "Hey, I heard a plane hit the World Trade Center," and I went, "What?" And I grabbed my coffee and rollerblades, and I rollerbladed down to the water's edge, and sure enough,
Jesus,
the wind is blowing, away from us south
toward Brooklyn, exactly,
and I'm
due east.
Right. It's the clearest day I've ever seen in my life.
Most beautiful day in the history of New York. Couldn't have been nicer.
I think so. And I see a gaping hole, and everyone is like, "What the heck is that?" And I'm looking, and I'm down near like this area of this field where everyone hangs out. And I'm like, well, I remember talking to somebody and saying, well, that can't be like an accident. I mean, it's like, how could a plane hit the building in this clear weather? And then I remember this. Now, listen to this, Peter. I remember going, oh, look. I said, it looks like a rescue plane is coming.
Oh, my God.
Because I remember, this is the best of my recollection, I remember a grayish plane. I do not remember a white passenger plane. I remember like one of those gray military planes. That's what I thought I saw. That's why, and the way I know that is because that's why I remember saying, "Hey, a rescue plane is coming into the area."
What a strange thought. But yes, I hear you.
It goes down behind the buildings because it's south for me, and then all of a sudden you see the big explosion. Well, people are crying. Somebody's going, God damn it, he's hitting the ground. We're under attack. So we're kind of putting together what's happening. And I stayed the rest of the day. I watched the two buildings fall from across the water. And I rolled home on my rollerblades somewhere late afternoon, laid on my bed, stared at the ceiling fan, and just remember saying, what are you doing with your life? Your skills, what are you doing? What are you doing with everything? He said, you've got to do something that takes this game up a notch.
Got it.
And when I made that promise to myself, the little girl from the coffee shop and donut shop when I was a kid, that memory came back to me, and that decided it for me. And I said, okay. I said, I get the message. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to paint burn survivors.
Wow.
And the reason why I wanted to do this was I wanted to, again, and if you look through all my work from my religion and uniform paintings that we'll get to and so on, they all have to do with the illusion of our exterior. That we are not a body, we're actually a spirit. I believe this more today than ever.
Yeah.
In fact, we're not a body.
We live in a body.
We're not a body having a spiritual experience. We're a spirit having a physical experience. It's the other way around.
Yes.
Our home is a spiritual world. This is my thoughts. I'm not imposing it on anybody. So when I made that decision, now hockey comes into it because I play hockey with cops and firemen. My friend Brian Green, who's the fire chief, is playing hockey with me, and I skated up to him. And I said, Brian, where would I find burn survivors?
Wow.
And he goes, well, what for? I said, I got this idea, an art project. And he gave me the name of a Kathy Conlon at St. Barnabas Burn Center. I wrote her a letter. It took a little while because I think at first they were taken back, like, who is this nut?
Yeah, right. Some prurient, crazy person.
I ended up sending her photos of my work to show her that I was a credible painter.
Yes.
And they invited me to St. Barnabas, and that's how it began. The whole thing began. Gosh. They took 10 burn survivor volunteers. And the one I'd like you to show is photograph number, hold on. Where is Shayla? Huh. She should be there. Tools, dog tools, absolute vodka, Jelani. Well, I'll tell you what.
The first one I have.
Jelani.
Which one?
You could bring up Jelani.
You got it.
Number 6. Okay.
Tell us about Jelani.
This is Jelani Jeffrey. The one I wanted to show you is actually on my wall behind me. But the reason why I wanted to show it to you, it's on my whistleblower site. It's on my burn survivor site.
We'll take a look at it on your wall once we bring down this picture.
Yeah. Shayla was a 14-year-old girl that I painted who was severely burned. Her brother accidentally lit her bed sheet on fire. Yeah,
directly to your right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're looking at them.
Yeah, that's a 14-year-old burn survivor. She lost her fingers. She lost so many different things to her. All she ever wanted to do was be an actress and a famous girl and this and that. Her polyester bed sheet lit on fire, stuck to her, and burned her severely. Oh, God. And the day I went to her house to meet her to do this project, they volunteered. I remember pulling up in like Edison, New Jersey, in my little Mini Cooper, like my little British Mini Cooper classic car, right? I remember pulling up and everybody looking at me like, who is this guy coming down the street? Parking. I got out of the car and I looked at the front door and I see this little person waving like this with no fingers. She's just waving like this. And I went like this and I put my head back in the car and I started to cry my eyes out. Of course. And I said, Doug, pull it together. How are you even going to go in? And I'll end up tearing up telling you this. I said, how are you even going to go in the house, much less interview her, talk to her mother and everything? Well, I pulled it together and came in. We had a whole discussion. Shayla, had these ambitions and she was a hairdresser and she wanted this and she wanted that. And I'll cut to the chase on this story. That Mrs. Lynn, her mother, said to me, she goes, I saw you when you got out of the car. She goes, I know what you were all about. And I got taken back. She goes, I know what you're all about. She goes, I saw you get out of the car. I saw you come up to the house. And I got a good feel about who you are. And I thought she was going to go, who are you? Some huckster kind of hack, kind of trying to make money off my daughter's picture. And then she said to me, Doug Auld, she said, you're doing God's work. She said, my Shayla doesn't have a chance without you. And I could cry right now, remembering it and knowing what she meant. She goes, my Shayla doesn't have any hope unless somebody starts to unmask this dilemma that we have in the world of how we look. It's our looks. If nobody wants to sit next to a obese person or a burn survivor person or a person with a twisted nose or this or that. And this has precedence in nature. They did experiments with sparrows and they put colored tubes on little sparrows' legs, white, or black, or whatever, white, black. Whenever they switched them around to make them non-symmetrical, they didn't make. No bird went near them. Because the assumption is that bird has something wrong with them, out of balance, and will not be good for breeding.
Oh my gosh.
So this is not only a human trait. This goes throughout all of nature. And I started to think about this more and more and more. And that's why I wanted to do this series of work. And so I got the okay from St. Barnabas. I did this series of work called State of Grace. And why don't we now bring up Jelani Jeffrey. Now, these are all oil paintings, and they're very large. They're 40 by 50 inches. Jelani, what a remarkable story. I'll tell you real briefly because I know we don't have a ton of time.
We're doing fine.
Okay. Jelani was at home in, Newark or something like that. He was watching his two younger brothers. He fell asleep on the couch. A woman would come in next door because the mom, Mrs. Jeffrey, is working two jobs and she's working through the evening and she can't be home to watch the kids. So a woman poked her head in and looked in on Jelani, and everything okay. When she walked out, he kind of dozed off on the couch. Somehow, a fire starts in the house.
Oh, God.
He wakes up to the whole place filling with smoke and burning. He wakes his brother up, but the cable wire of the house, the cable wire that was installed incorrectly hanging above, was hot and melting and fell on the brother and like scarred him, and he got him loose, and he got everyone out of the house. He backed into the kitchen to make a phone call to the fire department.
Oh, no.
There's too much fire in the rest of the house. He can't get out. His hands are already burning. He can't even dial the phone. He makes the phone call, and he jumps out the window on fire or melting like this, and he breaks both his legs from a 2 or 3 story fall and survives. That's him without his fingers. Jelani is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met to this day. I'm friends with him. We've spoken together. In fact, I'm being reminded now to give him a call again soon. And he sells real estate, and he does this, and he speaks, and he does all sorts of stuff. So again, these people are the same Jelani as the same Jelani inside him, but he no longer has that exterior. Now, I'll tell you one other thing. My son, Brian, said to me once, shows you what it can do. How art can do things. My son was on the PATH train and going into the city, and there were a bunch of people sitting around, and one guy was sitting by himself at the end of the PATH train, and he had a little hand sticking out of his shoulder. He had no arm, and had one of those little hands. And Brian went and sat next to him, and they started a great conversation. And he said, and when it was done, after the guy left and everything, Brian told me some days later, he said, you know what, Dad, if you didn't paint that Burn Survivor series, I wouldn't have done that. Wow. And so my idea was to let these large-scale portraits be a broker between real life and our inability to stare, because all we really want to do, a lot of times what we want to do is we want to stare and process what we're looking at. But because it's a true human being and it's awkward to stare, you want to turn and walk away and like most of my burn survivors that have volunteered for my show, for my work, I've asked them, how would you rather people do? And a lot of them said, I would rather someone just say, hi, what happened to you? So that's some of what's the reasoning for what has gone on in this work and what my purpose was. Yeah. And then the last one we could bring up would be Maha. That is number 8.
Sure. Here she comes.
And I'll tell you that story. All right. This is Maha Schaff. And when German television saw my New York Times article with my burn survivor portraits, they sent Maha here for me to photograph, and with the agreement that when Maha, she's a German girl, I'll tell you the story. They sent her here, paid for her trip out here. We met, we photographed her, and we had a great conversation and this and that. And she went home. When the painting was done, they invited me to Germany to go on German television and present the painting at a gallery, present the painting to Maha. And the story of Maha was she was dating a Turkish kid. Her father was a drunk German guy. And when Maha was coming home, he doused her with gasoline and lit her on fire.
Jesus Christ.
As she was walking in the front door.
Because she was dating a Turkish guy.
And this is what she was left with. And it's so tragic. Over what? Over absolutely what?
Nothing.
This is the anger and alcoholism and
ignorance
yes. and self-hate that got taken out on this poor girl. Yeah. And so again, this painting is part of my series, and it's designed to, I mean, the galleries, Peter, the art galleries pretty much avoid me. They always have, and I'm not going to totally blame them because I'm not the most compliant participator in the art world. I don't really enjoy a lot of what goes on. I don't want to have to go to the shows and play pretend. And I don't want to do a lot of things that, I don't want to like continue painting a painting that, like, let's say Ivan Karp says, I'd like 10 of these. I'm like, well, but I want to do something different. So I'm not very marketable in that sense, but I am very media worthy. The media likes to do stuff about me. So, but that's what we have on the State of Grace series.
I'm going to bring up, before I show the New York Times article, the portrait that you did of J.R. Martinez.
Yes. Okay. I met J.R. This painting is the largest of the burn survivor portraits that I did. It's over 60 inches tall.
Wow.
And it's called Back from Iraq.
Oh,
and
God.
J.R. was a serviceman in Iraq that was caught in an IED, improvised explosive unit, whatever they call it.
The device,
device. And it blew up his Humvee, and he was severely burned and so on. And I thought that would be like one of the culminations. That painting, if you could really see up close, is a marvelous example of almost abstraction, because if you got up close to the skull of that painting in real life, it's just complete abstraction. You don't know what's going on.
Landscapes from a strange
landscapes. It looks like it's celestial. It's like outer space. And
sure.
And then you look at the colors, and that's one of the things that I always wanted to have people notice, is that in a face that's so-called flesh tone, whatever that is now, we have blues and purples and magentas and yellows and reds and all sorts of stuff. And so that's Back from Iraq. Yes.
Wow. And the piece in the Times here, very powerful.
That's Rebecca.
And good for the Times for not flinching on this layout.
Yeah. Andy Newman came and did that article and photographed those two sisters. They're two young gals from Haiti whose 5 family members burned to death in that fire.
Jesus.
They survived. The girl closest to us is this is Rebecca and Louise. Louise is closest to us, and she lives actually in my town in Hoboken.
Oh.
I constantly am involved with her. I help her out with a lot of stuff. I bring groceries. I fix things in her house. I put her air conditioner in and out. And she calls me her earth angel. I'm the one who's on the scene for her. Both of these young gals, severely burned, both of these young gals have PhDs. They put themselves through school. And you can't imagine the world of going to school as a person with such deficits physically that, they have to overcome. So that's really sums up. And that Times article, I think, and Peter, I wasn't selling anything. My father didn't leave me too much advice about making money, because he would have hit me over the head. That newspaper article brought me over 800,000 hits on my website.
Good Lord.
And I was not offering anything for sale.
Doug, I love you like a brother, but we've talked, I've seen your work, but I'm now doubly glad that we're doing this, the first of a number of appearances on this show and discussions, either you and I or you and I in tandem with other friends. It's really special. And you just used a phrase. It's a catchphrase. It's like white light. You can't imagine. Well, you and I happen to have particularly good imaginations.
Yeah.
But forget about it. I can't imagine. What I can do is have some appreciation for the depth of my inability to imagine. And from there comes this combination of awe, respect, that moment where you look back at yourself and you think, the world of what I thought a moment ago of my problems is now kind of an embarrassing existential joke. I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. And I like to think, because of the way I was brought up, we're not just here to take up space. We should be of service to those around us, our community, other people, our families, and go out of our way to leave this world a little better than we found it. You, Doug Auld, are leaving it considerably more than a little better in the way that you are living your life and creating this work. And again, the thing about being an artist, and some people are artists who never paint a picture and they draw, or drawing. They live their lives in a certain way. And I think it's hard for somebody that's not involved to understand that boredom for an artist, for a creative personality, it's the equivalent of what pain is to bring your attention to an injury. I also was not terribly marketable because I got bored. I would change my mind. I would become interested in something else and know that, no, you can't count on me to deliver 20 canvases in this manner and build a reputation. And in the formal major grown-up art world, this guy's going to be an earner because you can look at his work. It's identifiable. It's, you don't look at an Andy Warhol or, well, to a lesser degree, to a Roy Lichtenstein, say. You're looking at a Roy Lichtenstein. And Roy took on that role. I know from knowing him slightly, it wasn't always the most exciting thing to do, but he was making more money than God, and he couldn't walk away from it, and the fame, etc. But to shift gears in sometimes a joyously irreverent way, we have this. Let's talk about this 16th century being.
That's so amusing to me because that was like this. No wonder why I don't have an art dealer. It's like that's one of those things that I painted out of my imagination.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking to myself once with my obsession with ufology and the ET presence and, looking back into history, were they around the Anunnaki? Were they around for the pyramids and this and
that?
I said, well, imagine they were around in like this time of Rembrandt and Velázquez and, whatever. And so that was my way of dating the comment. To say that, they're like, look at the, whatever you call this thing around his neck and like the black outfit is like, it immediately puts you to that time frame. Nobody wears that today. And although maybe I'll bring it back, I don't know. But so that was just a comment on, they've been with us. They have to have been with us.
It's also, it's great fun too.
It is.
It honors a certain period, a certain tradition, a certain kind of lighting that's very 17th century Holland. And it's also a lot of fun and a little bit of a poke in the eye with a sharp stick for those people who find it irreverent. At one point, some years ago, I had a chance, I made it my business to go through your gallery of whistleblowers for the first time. And I kind of played a game with myself, which was, I recognize this person, I know about this person, who is this face? And then reading up and finding out. And one of the more fun, poignant aspects is occasionally, when it was appropriate, possible, you would pose with your subject with the finished work, which again, we're talking about something the size of an album cover. And here's one of a somewhat well-known individual in the work.
Oh, yeah. So that's when I met Linda in New York City. And I think that was the gentleman that you said was his name Bill last night, you mentioned in an email.
Yes.
I think he was with me eventually with me when we went out to dinner. And and that, I painted Linda as part of this series without a doubt. And the only thing that I got wrong at the time was, and she corrected me, was she says, Doug, you got to give me blue eyes. And I said, you know what? I think I will. But you know what? Once the painting was done, it's very hard for me to go back into a painting. Listen, this is what it is. So, maybe Linda, you got to wear brown contacts or something, but that's what it is. But I really like the portrait, and
I do too.
I think Linda liked it also. Yeah.
Yeah. And here is a compilation.
Yeah, that's just like, 36 of them?
For some of us, we can go right through and name a lot of those people right off the bat. For me, I'm fortunate enough to have had or have a number of those people as friends or friendly acquaintances over the years. And it's great to see them together here, even in reduced size. Now,
yep.
I think it's a repetition of the fish painting. Let me just double check here.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's a different one.
It's a different one. Now, this is the portrait.
Let's talk about this one. Yeah.
When I was invited by MTV, invited me to go on their Museum of Unnatural History tour.
For a lot of people that know the world of pop music and already some of your story and its turning points, we already see whose face this is.
Yes, Jim Morrison of the Doors, and I absolutely love this painting for a number of reasons, other than it being Jim Morrison and just nature. I always love that nature provides me the perfect piece to stick somewhere, like that flounder for his chin. It's just so perfect. I mean, that just makes up the type of lighting that I needed on his chin. And I love the great white shark on the bottom right that signifies sort of self-destruction.
Sadly, ending up in a cemetery in Paris at the age of 27.
27 years old, and yet beautiful and colorful and alive, and so, it's the pieces of the puzzle that are all synchronizing at the right time. I think the original idea that I got for all these kinds of things was staring at a light bulb as a kid and watching the mosquitoes and flies fly around. And I remember daydreaming, freeze framing it. And sooner or later, a portrait or a face or a thing would show up. And I used to do that as an imagination.
You had mentioned earlier that you've always only been interested in capturing the representational world, not the abstract or non-objective schools of painting. And yet sometimes reality can have its own non-objective quality. You did a painting called The Vision.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about this?
Okay, this is a true life paranormal event that happened to me. I was with my friend Charisse, and we were in Mexico, and we were in this condo, and we were laying on the bed late in the day, a beautiful day. We had a beautiful breeze coming through the room, and we were just in that lazy kind of laying together, just talking, looking up at the ceiling type of thing, kind of mood. And I closed my eyes, and I noticed every time I closed my eyes, almost like a movie starting, almost like a picture. And Peter, this never happened to me again. This is the only time in my life I've ever had this happen. That over a 15 to 20 minute period of time, an apparition started to get brighter and brighter and brighter. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I said, Charisse, and I could talk to her. I could say, Charisse, I'm seeing something in my head with my eyes closed. I'm seeing this, what I called an angular flower or an angular rose, something about that, and it's glowing, and there's infinity. I mean, millions upon millions. I couldn't even begin to count of breathing dots coming in and out and in and out. And the entire scene is breathing. She's like, you're kidding me. What are you? And we kept talking about it. And I said, it's getting brighter. And I would open my eyes, it would be gone. And I'd close my eyes, and there it is again. And it increased and increased and increased to a height, and then slowly backed away. And we talked about it, and I discussed it. And I said, when I get home, I'm going to try as best I can to make some sort of representation of what I saw. And that's what I came up with.
Wow. The creative mind is ever looking for new ways to entertain itself on a certain level and try something out, or none of us are above a good pun. And sometimes to make something that is a representation, whatever it is, in the case we're about to show, an extraordinarily historic, tragic moment in American history, but with the punning aspect. Those of us that are old enough to remember the assassination of John Kennedy or have seen some of the important images around that time either remember or know that picture of the law officer who Lee Harvey Oswald was handcuffed to when he was shot dead in the walkway below the Dallas police building, and that look of shock on his face at the moment that bullet is entering Oswald. And the title of this painting is The Serial Killer. And even though Ruby wasn't a serial killer, can you tell us why? And not to laugh at a very serious moment, but I am laughing.
Well,
why is this the serial killer?
It should be somewhat humorous. The serial killer, meaning cereal, cereal, not, it's the food cereal, not the word cereal that we're accustomed to it. And it's Trix cereal. And I created this image because, number one, I saw that absolutely happen live in front of my eyes.
Yes,
me too. I watched it. I was like, holy crow, Greg, Mom, I think my brother was sitting next to me. And we were all in shock about it. And then I started to, time later, I started to really think about the fact that with all the violence and everything that we see on TV, we eat this stuff up. This is our sugar. This is our, we can't get enough of it. We can't consume, almost in an Andy Warholish type of manner and thought of advertising and consumption and repetition. How many times they showed it over and over and over again. And I thought to myself, if I could language this image in Trix cereal, again, borrowing from the Chuck Close idea of a grid and a mark making system. And so a mark making system going back to mosaics when we had Greek and Roman mosaics.
Yes.
And I mean, Chuck put his images together by little grid squares of what he would call dumb marks or abstract marks.
Yes.
Well, I had to take Trix cereal and take the values offered me from the darkest purple up to the brightest yellow. And there's a bunch of values in there. There's yellows and then greenish ones and orange, then deeper red than orange. And they all came out a little different. Their sizes were a little different.
Sure.
And I used silicone bathroom caulking.
That was the question. Okay.
Okay. And dot by dot by dot, I would stick a Trix on. So I must have had about 10 boxes of Trix. I'm sure I ate a whole box or two myself when I was doing this.
Suffering for your art.
Totally suffering and ruining my digestive system for my art. That was an offbeat. And again, Peter, getting back to what you said, and I so identify with what you said about the art world. I'm not going to do another Trix cereal. I mean, I don't want a dealer saying, Doug, JB, we could use 10 Trix cereal paintings and we could really sell them and you're going to do great. Now, what I ended up doing with that piece is I bartered somebody who saw it, loved it, and I bartered a trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico and stay at their house, expenses paid for that painting. And I brought it out to them, painting creation. Brilliant. And I've always called that a work in progress because it's decomposing as we speak about it. So
before we move on, we had a guest several months ago, another dear friend, as remarkable as you in his own way. Gus Russo, among his accomplishments, is one of the most respected researchers, writers, and authors on the Kennedy brothers and the John Kennedy's assassination. And in the course of researching one of his books, he became friends with that then retired law officer. Right. And I'm going to make sure he gets a copy of that painting. Moving on, here's your gallery wall. this is what we're seeing behind you at another angle, or is this another setup?
It's a theme and variations of the wall behind me, but in this case, it was cleaned up and was that's my burn survivor portraits. You can see there's Shayla. To the left is man, where's my memory? Not Fernando. Yes, Fernando. There's one on the top. There's Adam on the top. There's Brian Freud in the top middle, and a young boy who was playing with matches when he came home in a lobby scenario and lit himself on fire. Then there's 3 on the bottom that are portrait studies that I ended up not really doing in large scale. But those portraits, those people I met, I was invited to the World Burn Congress, which is not a thing that the average person goes to. And I met a lot of different burn survivors, photographed them, got to know them. And, and listen, Peter, I am absolutely sure that in that crowd of those people, there are some people that did not want to receive me well, did not know what I'm doing there. But, and you're always going to, when you step out and you take a chance and make yourself a little bit of a pioneer and a mark on something, you're always going to have contrarians that are going to go, who the hell is he?
And understandably.
But for art, for the time that art is never really appreciated in its day. It can't really. In fact, I heard the term that art cannot be appreciated for 50 years. It has to really be absorbed in, because you have to decide whether it's fad, whether it's this, whether it's that. And a lot of times you can't tell if it's fad unless you grow through a 25-year period and you look back and you go, then the wheat and the chaff get kind of separated.
Yeah. We're shifting gears now, and this is a photo of you with 2 of your good friends, well known to many of us in the field of UFO studies.
Yep, Mr. Travis Walton and Chris Bledsoe, who I met, and both were great guys in my interaction with them. I know Chris much better than I know Travis. And, when we get around to talking to Hypnota, my musical.
Yes.
Chris, both of them, and many of the experiencers are the people who totally inspired my story making in my show. Nancy Tremaine, who is not in any of the pictures here today, is one of the people that I will be talking about a lot when we get into discussing Hypnota. But Chris's amazing experience. I've been to his home 3 or 4 times. I stayed with his family. I sat across from him. He had tears in his eyes. I mean, the stuff that he went through, the way it ripped his family apart, and everything around it just constantly spoke to me of, I don't know, you just don't make this stuff up. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me that this was contrived. And I mean, his story has remained the same all this time. I'm not saying he hasn't gone through his own changes. He has. It's been a rough time for him. And now his son Ryan is very involved and stuff. But I know the family well. I've had them here and so on. So
great.
So
continuing, other friends.
Yep. There we have Mike Cleland, the author about the owls, and
a good friend and a past guest on this show.
Yeah, and the wonderful Grant Cameron, who has been one of my allies for a long time in this entire thing. Probably the UFO personality ufologist that I know the best. I mean, Grant and I somehow hit it off, and then the stuff that the very weird stuff that maybe we'll get to talk about is my introduction into Ron Pandolfi.
Yes.
And the family and the CIA connection and the ufology's hesitancy around me. Yeah. Which is understandable up to a certain degree, and it's an interesting topic to discuss.
And
all right. This is absolutely one of my favorite paintings.
It's lovely.
This is as Vermeerish as I'm gonna get. I love this painting. It's called Sister Cindy, Cindy, not Cindy, Cindy. Again, I always like to have a little whimsy in my work.
Yeah.
Very, very simply, here is a young, beautiful young gal who happens to be a nun.
Looking at L, excuse me.
Right. Now she's in the nun is in her black uniform. She represents spirit and faith and belief. And this other beautiful young gal is in her black uniform. She represents sex and allure and fashion. Both of them are on a timer, and that's the fruit. The fruit will eventually go bad, and we only have so much time to play our act and play our game and live our lives. And we have uniforms to present ourselves to the world, but we are really just all the same. And that's what that painting has to do with.
It's a wonderful painting.
I just love it. All right, now here's its brother, so to speak. This is called the Science Times, and here's sort of like a Jesuit priest. Now he's a little bit of a rough and tumble guy. He's got boxing gloves in the back on the wall.
Yep. Looking right at us.
He smokes cigarettes. He's got a shot glass there, right? He's got a shot glass there. The matches say E equals MC squared on the book of the matches, which happened to be a real book of matches that I had at the time. And I was like,
perfect.
Oh, wow.
And is he smoking Cools?
He's smoking Cools.
Jeez.
He's got an alien keychain on his keys, which I had at the time. His books and his wisdom and his hat and his learning are behind the key to the painting, which is he is willing to read the Science Times, which says what else works out there, basically, on the cover. So this is a comment. This is a whole bunch of jarring impulses of religion and science and outer space and alien life and who are we and what are we doing here. The questions that I ask myself every morning and night, nonstop. And then this ends up tying into Hypnota and, my work. But this is a marvelous, I love this painting, and I painted it from life. I did not paint this from
Oh, cool.
I had this young guy, a friend of mine at the time, come and sit for me. And he had a little, outfit from a collar, and he would sit for me. And then I, of course, would paint the rest of it while he wasn't there.
Sure. Moving on. Well,
here's from my earlier surrealistic scenes from much earlier. This is called Similar Extremes, and quite simply saying, look how these shapes all match up, but look how opposite their qualities are. Hot sun, cold moon, hot sky, cold sky, wet ocean, dry sand. Yet all those shapes just meet in the middle.
And talk about life in two worlds. Your next painting has a title many of us associate with probably the best known moment in a certain film that we associate with a certain actor, but the subject matter is very different.
This is an oddball painting for me. And I actually painted what looks like to be the YouTube computer part of it too. Everything is painted. The You Can't Handle the Truth is the title. And this was, the impulses I was thinking about why can't this stuff be disclosed?
Yeah.
And it basically comes down to the fact that, we can see it in on YouTube, we can see it in movies and photographs, but we cannot, the Brookings Institute and all the study that I did in ufology and everything we've come up to has basically said that this is something that will rock the world in large part, and that's why it's not been able to be disclosed. I forget exactly the origins of that image. I can't quite remember that, but that's the one I wanted to use.
Well, also, the Brookings Institute report that you refer to goes back to 60 or 61. This is not a new sensibility. And for me, There are a lot of people that we know in particular say, I'm ready for disclosure. Give it to us. If somebody can't handle it, too bad, get used to it. It's happening. I do not subscribe to that point of view. I'm a humanist. We still have a ways to go, but we are in the process. No question about it.
Interesting.
And our final image for now, again, harking back to, some of our favorite surrealists, and I'm thinking of Gregory Chiaro, is it?
De Chirico.
Yeah, there you go.
De Chirico, and there was Yves Tanguy and De Chirico and all these surrealists.
With a nod to, of course, Dali and the other great surrealists who, for many of us, captivated our imaginations first when we were young. Was this a fairly early one in your surrealist painting?
Yeah. Unfortunately, when I sent you these photographs, I had to redo them. When I redid them, I didn't put them in the order that would have made a little more sense. But it's all good. This painting is embodied my very, very young war with, am I going to be a musician or a painter? And so the piano and the notes are battling the paint and the brushes. And it's a tug of war, and one's going to get pulled off the cliff and go all the way down. And the notes are coming over the bar there back on the right, and they're going to attack. And the brushes are throwing the paint. And it's just kind of like a almost childlike idea. And the piano has got like a dog when you're trying to So that's called the Battle of Art and Music. And that was what I was struggling with.
It's great. And, in a way, I'm glad that this particular broadcast is coming into its final few minutes as it is. I would much rather begin our next broadcast, which I'm going to say later this spring. You're going to be back here, and we're going to pick up with this remarkable ability you have almost to morph in terms of form. I know a lot of fine painters, a lot of great musicians, a lot of wonderful composers. I've been very lucky like that in my life. Wonderful writers, sculptors, but I don't know many people who master one form. And I will include mechanics and hockey and piano tuning, and just decide, I'm going to move on and I'm going to learn another form. I don't know. Well, I take that back. I know very few people who have ventured into the world of writing a full-length Broadway-type musical, and no one who has had the guts, imagination, and whatever else goes with it to do one about the UFO reality. So in the brief minute and a half or so that we have left, I'm going to give you about 40 seconds, and I'm going to take about 40 seconds to tie this up. Your thoughts in closing this particular episode of Meanwhile Here on Earth, Doug.
Great, Peter, and it's been great. Thank you for having me on. I think that I have moved to a point where I don't want to make material things anymore. I want things that exist in the ozone, in the ether, in the atmosphere. Music is probably, for all of us, the best example of something that so passionately moves us all. I can think of a song from the 1960s and remember the gal I was dating much better than I can look at a painting in the Met and remember who I was with at the time. There's something about the vibration of music, which is the quality of all our lives. We're all vibrational. So Hypnota, a word given me while I woke up in the middle of the night, was, and I tell people this when they go to my site, hypnota.com, this show was downloaded to me. It is beyond my pay grade. I do not know how I created it. It came out of me like a river when I wrote this. And I can simply say in the 7 years it took me to write the entire show, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm going
to ask you to hold it there, Doug Auld. Yep. Thank you so much for being a guest. You can visit Doug's art website, Doug Auld, DOUGAULD.com, his UFO-related site, DougAuld.com/UFO, and Hypnota, HYPNOTTA.com. This is Peter Robbins. This has been Meanwhile Here on Earth. If you've enjoyed the show, tell your friends, stay well, fight for what you believe in, and be kind to each other. We'll see you next week.